Acting Deputy President. And the Government of Australia is about to preside over the greatest conflict of interest in modern times, because the Government of Australia is going to allow major super funds to pass on enormous regulatory fines for their wrongdoing to their members. So the trustees of these major funds who have made huge errors will have these fines paid by the workers. A howling conflict of interest which goes to the centre of this government, where one of the main players is the President of the Labor Party, the same person, Mr Wayne Swan, who is also the chair of the CBUS Super Fund. Now, the Labor Party was surprised, apparently, when Nick McKenzie at the Nine newspapers exposed the heinous crimes of the CFMEU, which have inflated the building costs for all Australians and have made the Australian dream further out of reach for younger people wanting to buy an apartment, with the CFMEU's 30% tax on Australian building. Now, the conflict of interest in relation to industry super and CBUS was well known, and it has been well known for a long time. In fact, Jeremy Soldier, the counsel assisting the Hayne Royal Commission, said of the CBUS CFMEU issue that CBUS was infected by the separate private interests of the CFMEU and its deep-seated loyalty to these interests. And a review by Mr Graham Samuel, the former head of the ACCC, recommended the end of this model, and he said of Mr Swan, "It's a very powerful position to hold as chair. It sets a tone and culture of the organisation. If they've got a tendency or a history towards supporting certain groups, then you've got a problem." And he said, "And Wayne Swan is a perfect example of a political operative, so then you've got to question the absolute independence of the chair." That was the view of Graham Samuel almost 10 years ago, when he recommended reforms to CBUS and the super funds, which have not been adopted. Now, the prudential regulator APRA has now had to come in and commission a new inquiry into CBUS's governance, the same thing that Graham Samuel did 10 years ago. And APRA, I'm sure, is going to have to recommend that there is a better system here which protects workers. Yesterday, the CFMEU, which owned CBUS, tried to put 3 new directors onto the board of the fund, and APRA apparently seems to be resisting this. So the issue here of conflict of interest is enormous, because Mr Wayne Swan, as the chair of the CBUS fund, has publicly committed $500 million to the Housing in Australia Future Fund, usually a role reserved for the Chief Investment Officer. But no, the president of the fund, who's the president of the Labor Party, apparently commits members' money to the government's boondoggle housing scheme. And then the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, covers up the secret lobbying undertaken by Mr Swan through bogus public interest immunity claims made here in this parliament. Appalling. But the main point is, Acting Deputy President, is that when they make a mistake, you pay. If the trustees make a mistake, like they have, apparently, according to the Australian Securities Investments Commission, where CBUS fails to pay insurance claims. So the workers of Australia pay insurance premiums for decades in some cases, and when there is a family bereavement, the super fund refuses to pay. Refuses to pay. That is the opinion of the Corporate Cop and the Financial Complaints Authority. And so when they issue a fine, and in this case CBUS may be facing a $50 million fine, that fine is passed on to the members. So the poor old members pay these fees. Now, where is Labor on this issue? We've asked the question. We asked Senator Gallagher in the Senate. Her view is it's a matter for the regulator. But when there were issues of corporate malfeasance, the Treasurer was fast to condemn Woolworths, where he said that I need to be careful not to preempt. But I will say this. We don't want to see ordinary Australians, families and pensioners being taken for a ride by the big supermarkets. But on the CBUS issue, he says it's really important the regulators can do their job, and I won't be making any further comments. So the government is quick to condemn wrongdoing in corporate life, corporate Australia. They wouldn't even vote yesterday to disclose the Samuel review. They worked with the Greens. The Greens have been big on PwC, but they're small on CBUS. So the question is, why do the workers of Australia have to pay for this ridiculous conflict of interest? The super funds are privileged people. They open the door, the money falls in. The least they can do is treat people with respect, pay their claims and do the right thing. We shouldn't have a situation where the Treasurer is using his position to cover up for the crimes of Mr Swan and the CBUS Super Fund. It's a disgrace.